What are the most serious issues facing African Americans today?
I mean, as far as the young kids, their opportunities are limited, you know. As far as when it comes to jobs, you know, they getting out of school now, you know, and there's really no jobs.
In African American neighborhoods, you got guns, drugs, liquor stores, delis, everything that could just corrupt the young mind at a young age.
Young fathers in jail, that's one. Young mothers having babies, that's another one. There's a whole lot. Job opportunities, there's too many to count.
That's what they had to say. Now it's your call.
CN8's Emmy Award-winning It's Your Call with Lynn Doyle starts now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lynn Doyle. Thanks so much for joining us for an important discussion about race relations in our country. Now, usually when we focus on this topic, it's about whites and blacks. But this hour, we look at the dynamics between blacks themselves. We're talking about this because later this week, CN8 airs a very special town hall meeting hosted by my colleague, Arthur Fennell, that features Bill Cosby and his take on African American issues. Right now, though, we want your take, including what you think the most serious issues are facing black Americans today and what the solutions to some of those problems might be. For example, do you think prejudice and discrimination are two of the more pressing problems? Or is it a lack of education and employment opportunities? How about the number of children that are being born to people at or below the poverty level? Does that contribute to the continuation of a welfare society? And what about drugs and the gun violence that permeates African American communities these days? How would you change that? Finally, is rap music actually contributing to perpetuating violence? Some people say yes. We want to know if you agree. If you want to tell me what you think, you can start calling right off the top. Here are the questions that we'll be talking about in the upcoming hour. What are the problems that most blacks are facing today, and who's to blame for those problems? And what, if anything, can be done to make things better? And do you think that blacks should look to each other or others in this society for help? Many ways that you can be interactive here. Of course, you know you can give me a call. It is toll-free from wherever you're watching. You can also email me or take our web poll. They're both at cn8.tv. Let's get right into our debate and our discussion. We have a great panel that we've brought together, and they include one of my all-time favorites, Lisa Durden. She is a talk show host and a motivational speaker. She hosts The Lisa Durden Show, which has been airing like it's your call for 10 years. Also joining us, Rhonda Hill-Wilson, who is a civil trial attorney, as well as the host of Truth Rising on WURD 900 AM. Also joining us today, Dr. Antoine Galez, who is an urban educator and the principal of Avon Avenue Elementary School in Newark, New Jersey. His school hosted First Lady Laura Bush in March. And rounding out the panel is Chad Dion Lassiter. He's a social worker at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He's also president of Black Men at Penn School of Social Work Incorporated, which mentors young African American men in the Philadelphia region. And we are so glad to have all of them here. It's a fantastic panel. Welcome. Glad to have you here. I'm putting everybody on the hot seat today. Everybody's on the hot seat. But Lisa, I will start with you as the veteran of our show. What do you say is the most pressing problem facing African Americans today?
We're not holding up our end of the bargain. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. I still live in Newark, New Jersey, and I work in Newark, New Jersey and other cities. We're not holding up our end of the bargain. A lot of blacks, not all because they mistaken that, people say all, a lot of blacks in the inner cities are running around, shooting people in the back of the head, stealing, and doing ignorant things like that, and then they want to say the white man. People turn around and say, you know, why did they shoot this guy? Why did the cops kill them? Well, you did crime. So are you saying when the person does a crime and commits a crime and they're guilty, proven guilty and they're guilty, they shouldn't be shot? So you're not going to protect me, the innocent party? No, you're not, because if it's your son, you're going to say to me, they shot my son. Well, what if it's my son that your son shot? What about that?
All right, what about this concept of not holding up your end? Would you agree or disagree?
Well, let me jump right in, because I think the most pressing problem facing the African American community is an economic one. And when mothers and fathers are not able to provide in a holistic way for their children, whether it be resources for education, whether it be resources for recreation, whatever those resources are, then the family can break down. I don't know too many men, black or white or Asian or Mexican, who want to remain in a family unit and not be able to make an economic contribution. you have to pay the cost to be the boss in most family structures. So when men can't be men, then family structures break down. And when there are not jobs available, as they are decreasing now for black men, that, I think, creates a problem.
Well, let me ask a question. Are the black men staying around when the babies are being born?
And that's the key point that you bring up, and it's something that Rhonda also mentioned. I think the most pressing problem for us is the breakdown of the family and the significant number of single-parent homes. And when you have that family structure breakdown, you lose self-esteem amongst your black males, you have a lack of male role models, and you see our kids looking for structure, they're looking for discipline, and they find it in other places when that family structure is not in place.
Other places like what?
They look to the streets, and that's why we see a proliferation of gang violence in our streets, because the gangs give them a sense of family. Although it's not the type of family that you and I may consider family, it's a sense of unity, they have a sense of purpose, and they come together.
And protection, right?
And protection. So that's what they look to.
I guess for me, it's not rooted in either or. It's rooted in both, and I think that is no one singular challenge. I think we're looking at institutional racism. We're also looking at white privilege. We're looking at things from a structural standpoint. I think when you look at violence, American society is violence in and of itself, and so I look at things from a historical origin. I think with young black males, particularly here in the city of Philadelphia, we have to give them vision. Even the Bible says that where there's no vision, the people perish. We as African Americans have to give young people the vision that are on the corners. And I think oftentimes what we hear is we hear a lot of people articulating disadvantageous things that young people are doing. Here in the city of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Daily News and the Philadelphia Inquirer did not capture the 3,600 young people that were with U.S. Congressman Shaka Fattah and many others who received scholarships for Core Philly. There are a lot of positive programs and a lot of positive men that are doing a lot of great things in the city of Philadelphia. Most recently, Bilal Qayyum with the Father's Day rally committee that hosted a picnic in the park.
But Chad, that's across the board. I mean, basically the media never focuses on positive things, whether it be white, black, or purple, right?
But see, my goal today, Lynn, is to speak about the things we need to correct. We know that blacks come from kings and queens, and we came from royalty. But my view is, if one black person is living foul and they are a mess, that's one too many. And I storm through the streets of Newark now. I live in this drama, and every single day I see this crap. The white men cannot stop you from buying a condom. Women are having sex with these men. They don't have the self-esteem to command and demand using a condom. They have unprotected sex. These men get these women pregnant. They have no plans on marrying them, no plans on staying with them, no plans on feeding their children. They scream, "I'm not the baby's daddy," that new phraseology. And then when they take the test and now you're the baby's daddy, then they want to fight and say, well, since I'm giving you money to pay the woman back, they don't visit the child. They don't spend time with the child. So the white man cannot make you not visit your child.
I don't even know.
It's not always racism. Sometimes it is.
Yeah, but I think also from a solution-oriented perspective, from what you were saying with those young males in Newark,
not just in Newark, Philly, and a lot of inner cities,
and
Washington,
areas
DC.
like that. I think from a solution-oriented perspective, as I was saying, is that you sit down with them and you talk to them. Like with young males here in Philadelphia, I talk to them about not being breeders. I talk to them about abstinence. I talk to them about sex education. I talk to them about responsibility. And certainly, I'm not going to sit here on the show and talk about institutional racism, and those are the factors why some of them are factors. But for instance, in the city of Philadelphia, when we look at the gun violence and the things that are happening, when we look at legislation, and we all know that politicians, or in my earnest opinion, politicians are expedient, Lynn. And so what they want to do is pass gun legislation. For me, I think it's about gun legislation, and it's also about gun education.
But I also think that if you're talking about a system where only, for example, in Philadelphia, less than 2% of African Americans, this is a majority-minority city, get city contracts. We know city contracts create jobs.
Exactly.
When you go to job sites here in Philadelphia, you see jersey tags. You see white men working. You don't see many black men working. So if you don't give men and women, because I'm for women working too now, men and women opportunities to work, to give them an opportunity to have dignity and respect, then you're going to create a problem.
Is that going on all over the country, not just Philadelphia? Because
all
clearly our show is seen all over the country, and I'm sure that there are members of the African American communities who are saying, hey, I see this happen where I live too.
And can I say in all, and can I just say this, in all communities, in white communities where men are losing their jobs and they have no resources to fall back on, you find them becoming depressed. You find them, a lot of pathology that follows. So I'm saying, I think in our communities where the opportunities for employment are decreasing, that has tremendous impact on the structural integrity of the family.
As an educator, I have to go back to the fact that family comes first. That foundation is very important. But also, academic opportunity is what's going to give you the flexibility to move from job to job. In the event that one market dries up, you can move to another market and find another job. As an educator, I find that we don't place a high enough priority on the educational process.
Some of us
in our urban centers, we don't place a high enough priority. And the schools have been bombarded with so many extemporaneous responsibilities that should have taken place in the home, but now have become the responsibility of the school. So we take focus away from teaching those basic fundamentals to now providing sex education, driver's education, counseling services. So education has to be, basic education has to be a fundamental process, and students have to receive that fundamental right to move forward and address some of those issues that are rampant in our communities.
And if you can't read, you can't write. If you can't write, you can't spell. If you can't spell, you can't comprehend, and you can't think. A lot of these kids, you know, I'm motivational speak. I go and speak across the country to kids of all races, and it makes me want to scream when I go in the inner cities, and every black kid that I come across, I'm wondering, oh Lord, can they speak, can they read? A large majority of them cannot read, they cannot spell, they cannot think, they cannot comprehend, they cannot analyze.
Whose fault is that? Did the parents not teach them when they were
No, that's
wee
structural.
ones, or is that in
That
the
is
school
structural.
system?
Anytime, and this is not only in the black community. There was an article, I believe, yesterday in USA Today that shows the graduation rates across the country. Across the country, and in certain states it's more acute. But the point is that this is a problem, that the anti-intellectualism and the problem of decreased importance on education is something that's impacting all of America.
It's a culture, because in the black culture, we all know the truth. Let's be truthful today. We know in the hood.
I always am truthful.
In the hood, we know it's not cool to be smart. This is a culture we must change. Our kids are cooler when they're dumb. Our kids are cooler when they get F's. The kid who gets the A, the kid who goes to class every day, the kid who reads, they go, oh man, you're corny.
I disagree with you.
This is a culture. We need to break that.
I would simply say that there are some aspects of the acting white syndrome where it's not embraced to be intelligent. However, I would go back to your point, and I agree with it wholeheartedly in the sense that in some aspects of the African American community, our young people want to be basketball players and they want to be rappers. There's nothing wrong with the dream, which, once again, solution-oriented perspective is one that lends itself to, verbalize to them that you have a better chance of being a neurosurgeon than making it into the NBA.
Correct.
However, I don't think it's a culture, because African Americans have gone to HBCUs and they have gone to PWIs, predominantly white institutions, and the family structure, and particularly if you look at the black church as a social change agent, has promoted a lot of young people in the sense of telling them the benefits of education. However, I think you do have that aspect of young people who don't believe that, education is going to get me anywhere. And what we need to do as the village concept is to impress upon young people that education is the passport for their future.
I agree with you that the church is can play a very prominent role. However, the church is not as influential as it was maybe 30 or 40 years ago. The black church is not as influential, so you don't have that kind of network and support. And if we're not addressing quality of life issues in our urban centers, we're not going to see the kind of growth and change that we expect to see.
I have to take a break. Lots and lots to talk about here, but we want to know what you think about the problems in African American communities today. I'm so glad that Antoine mentioned the whole influence. Who has influence over African Americans today the most? Tell us what you think. Give us a call, email me, or take our web poll, which tonight is asking what you think the biggest problems are facing blacks today. Is it prejudice and discrimination, lack of education, unemployment, guns and violence, or perhaps apathy? Log on to cn8.tv and tell us what you think. More importantly, stick with us, because this panel is raring to go. We have more to say here on It's Your Call.
Now, once again, from CN8 headquarters in Philadelphia, here's Lynn Doyle.
Thanks very much for joining us once again. We are having a discussion tonight about race relations. As you know, we often have that topic here on this program. Tonight, though, we're focusing on the black community within itself. How do black people determine what the most pressing issues are facing them today and what are the solutions. If you'd like to tell us what you think, you can email me at cn8.tv. A great panel here with us this hour talking about this, and we wanted to return back to the concept of education, because I know that, Rhonda, you wanted to react to what Lisa had to say about the dumbing down of America.